Hello, everybody. We're going to move straight into our content here since we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there at the beginning, but here we are. I'll just quickly introduce myself and let Matt introduce himself. I'm Joe Murray. I'm our Chief Digital Officer in North America and run our customer experience product and design practice there. Matt, do you want to please introduce yourself very quickly?
Sure, I'd love to. So great to meet you all. I'm Matt. I'm VP for Customer Care and Innovation, as it said on the slide. So I work in our global customer group at BP, helping our customer business to grow.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. And Matt and I and Thoughtworks and BP have been on a journey over a number of years now around helping them in a number of working together around a number of CX and product opportunities. But the thing we wanted to talk about today is kind of our beginning of our journey. And it all began with this commitment that BP made around innovating their customer experience in the face of a new world of where many households were a blend of both electric vehicles and fossil fuel vehicles. How does BP reinvent and use their massive investment and footprint in the world to drive a better consumer experience and the next generation consumer experience? And one of the things that BP found in a lot of our the companies that we work with find is that the CX stuff can be really hard. Really driving a customer experience strategy into something that drives demonstrable and meaningful business results is something a lot of companies struggle with. And so we find a lot of different studies out there that show that a large number of companies are trying to focus on strategic application of customer experience, yet very few succeed. So we see stats like 87% of companies state that they provide excellent CX, yet only 11% of the customers agree. So as we went into tackling this at BP, what I'd like to start with, Matt, is maybe you could set the stage for us briefly on, what was the existing state at the beginning when when BP first realized they wanted to go down this journey.
Great, Joe, thanks. Look, I think a feeling of being completely overwhelmed. We had done a great job in ideating around what a future customer experience would look like at BP, and I'm sure many of you could resonate with this. How do you get yourselves out of PowerPoint or Mural and into something that's real? How do you get stuff into people's hands so that you can actually start realizing value? So we had a loyalty program that was a standard loyalty program, as it says on the chart here. We had some uptake, but not great uptake. And it just felt like a unmanageable task to be able to get our ideas that we put down on paper and got broad agreement with into an activity set where we could actually get our arms around it and feel confident that we're realizing value and focusing on the biggest opportunities first. So that was probably our going in point. And Joe and I often remark, the meeting that was the catalyst for all this. We had a marketing director from the US team saying, I just want it all. How can I get all of these ideas away? We keep salami slicing the idea into small parts and saying we can only deliver a little bit in the first 2 years and a little bit more, and that's not good enough. So how do we really get our arms around the whole piece? And so that was the catalyst for us working differently and partnering with Thoughtworks.
Thanks, Matt. And one of the things that you and I often chat about is that CX strategy is not for the faint of heart.
Yes.
And as you embarked on this journey, some of the challenges you faced. So I'd love to hear you talk about that. Could you expand for the group on what we mean by CX strategy is not for the faint of heart?
Yeah, I certainly can. And, I stand by that statement. We often smile at it. I think it's absolutely true. And, it's similar to what I said earlier. How do you take your vision and make it real? And the piece that unlocked that for our teams was really a mindset shift. And a mindset shift in saying, it's great to have a vision. But at some point in time, we need to be able to break that vision down into bite-sized chunks and feel comfortable that we are delivering now with our customers, understanding our customer response to that delivery, and then moving on to the next opportunity. Because I think, you often get pressure where in innovation or digital roles of saying, well, yeah, but what about the whole piece? When do we realize the whole thing? Where's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? And actually, this isn't about something I can do in 3 years' time. This is about something I can do in 3 weeks' time. And so the mindset around having sprints and celebrating successes, however small they were, really started to drive momentum for us, which meant our CX strategy became something that we were actioning, as opposed to something that we just sort of marveled at on a PowerPoint slide or in a presentation.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me the momentous occasion of the first time that you actually killed a project.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's another part. I think we are wired, certainly, BP is, I'm sure a lot of the companies that you guys work for is as well, on succeeding, right? People start projects and they have what I call political capital attached to these projects. It's Matt's project, it's got to work. And actually what we learned through this process is if every project works, you're not trying hard enough. You're not pushing the boundary hard enough. And so, we got ourselves to a place where we really started to celebrate the projects that didn't work, not quite as much as the projects that did, but just as much as the projects that did. In fact, we actually went as far as holding a wake for dead projects, to say, we didn't put weeks and weeks of effort in. We didn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. I tell a story as often as I get the opportunity of my 8-day project. In BP, I say, how many people in the room have ever worked on an 8-day project? They just don't exist. But we were brave enough to say, you know what, this isn't going to work. There's better things that we can be working on, and we're just going to stop. So whatever we spent in terms of effort in those 8 days, gave us learnings, helped us for future projects, but we didn't turn 8 days into 8 weeks and keep flogging it. We just were brave and stopped. And I think that, as much as anything, is a big part of the learning here, and why we say CX strategy isn't for the faint-hearted, because you've got to be ready to do that stuff.
Yeah, sometimes the answer is no, right?
Yes.
So moving from that, one of the things we talk about, in the title of our presentation today is about accelerating time to value. And you and I have had many conversations about the importance of this.
Yeah.
And I thought we could take a minute, and sometimes the term time to value can be a little buzzwordy. So I thought we could unpack that a bit for the audience in terms of what we mean by that. Could you reflect a little bit on this, especially on some of the things you've shared with me in the past about the where time to value really begins?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I think for me, time to value is the time it takes between starting the first project meeting, and actually having something of value in a customer's hands. Right now, in normal terms, value means that, there's something flowing through to the bottom line of my P&L. And I don't see that here. I see us being able to prove to customers that we've done something that they value and would help point them towards our brand more than any of the other many opportunities they've got in the marketplace. So, how do you accelerate your process as quickly as possible to get a small handful of consumers saying, actually, I understand what you're trying to do. You've put something in my hand and I would use it. And that would be of value to me. So, it's quite easy to get stuck in that sort of, I think it's going to be X and my 2027 vision is Y, and I need $4 million between now and then, and 6 people. You're talking about things that you have really low certainty around. So for us, time to value very quickly became, how can I focus on the now? How can I create strong hypotheses and either prove them or disprove them? And how can I get value into a customer's hands as quickly as possible? So we have been measuring ourselves on reducing time to value as much as possible along those parameters that I just described. And that's helping us get away from this FM financial memorandum documents and needing millions of dollars at once into just let me prove value with a small amount of money in a small amount of time with a small amount of people. And once I've done that, I'll move to the next and the next and the next. And so you build up as you learn, as opposed to shooting for something that probably isn't going to come true.
Yeah, exactly. And we've laughed about how a lot of, especially, we hear a lot of businesses get really focused on beating up their IT department around time to market.
Right.
But what really matters is how you actually move from that idea to funding that idea to then getting to market and that whole continuum. And like you said, being able to start small and make those choices quickly. Because great ideas die on the vine, right? I think what we talk about is, the shelf life of ideas in today's economy has never been shorter. So you could have these great insights based on good design thinking practice and customer research and all of that good stuff. But if you can't decide to move forward and get things funded and get things in market, then it's kind of not very valuable at the end of the day.
That's right. And just a few words on that, Joe. I mean, as soon as you start to get proof points, and as soon as you start to have verbatim or short vox pop clips that you can play back to your organization that says, here's what we did, here's what we built, we showed it to 5 customers in London, and here's the response we got. You start to build momentum, and that helps with your time to value too, because you start to generate excitement in the organization that actually customers are feeding back that you've done something great. And I find all the time I get all sorts of asks for, can you share that vox pop or that iPhone clip you took of that customer who said X, because it's so powerful. So I think this kind of parameter that we're looking at here on the chart, just have a think about that in your own world. How long does it take you to get from the opportunity that you've written up to launch? I mean, it can take months or even years, and that's just not going to work today. So how do you squeeze that into days or weeks? And I think you have to challenge yourself to that level and think very differently if you're going to start to really learn as you go, rather than shoot for something that probably won't happen.
Exactly. So given that, we talk about how time, you can't have time to value if you're not focused on outcomes. And we talk a lot about focusing on outcomes versus outputs. That's another different theme for time to value. Can you share with us a little bit about what were the outcomes that BP was searching for on this?
Yeah, I mean, we were really looking to help our customers reappraise what BP is all about. And so, some of the projects that we prioritized were some things that we felt perhaps previously impossible, but with the support of Thoughtworks and our technology suite, we actually found a way through. And we wanted to create disruption in a loyalty sense. So loyalty can often be a points-based system, and you collect points for 6 months and you can buy yourself a cup of coffee, and it's really not that motivating. Whereas actually we were looking to get much more of emotional engagement with customers, and really help them feel confident about the purchases they were making by guaranteeing them the best price in a certain region. So that output and clear objective for the project of saying that's the response that I want from my customers really helped us, because until we were getting something that was actually an emotional feed, as opposed to a rational kind of so what feed, it wasn't really gonna help us. So we looked at some of the 4 boxes that Joe's got here on the slide, around, can I get the right engagement? Can I be meaningful enough to customers so they would actually subscribe to us? I mean, subscribing to a fuel company seems a little bit out there, but we had some real success there. And then, are we delivering real incremental margin and revenue to what it is we're doing because of the subscription and the engagement that we're getting? So we tried to box it off into those 4 areas and stay laser focused on those. And when the team came together, both business and IT, we started to realize some of those outcomes, which was great for us.
Thanks, Matt. And so another aspect of our journey together on this was the idea and the concept of part of accelerating time to value and having that speed also requires that you have some concept of a North Star that you're traveling towards with these incremental thin slices.
Yeah.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about how we rationalize those two together and the North Star that was created at BP around this idea.
Sure thing. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what we've got here is customer engagement platform, which I guess, a lot of you have probably heard about. We use this slide and this content a lot in helping us explain our vision. And it talks a little bit to what I was talking about right at the very start. Our customer journey was laid out and everybody marveled at the customer journey. Yep, that's what we want to be able to go and do. In fact, we shared this customer journey with the outside world and some of our investors. But really then to get into the detail of, well, what does that actually mean? And what do we actually have to do? And who do we need to enable this? Helped us get into the nuts and bolts and pick out elements of the customer journey that we were going to focus on first. So, in simple high level terms, think about the journey, think about the areas of highest value, think about the channels you need to be able to realize that and pick one to start with. You don't have to do all at once. Think about what you need to build yourself versus what you can get from others. And with a view of time to value, often what you can get from others is a good way to start. And then think about how you're going to be able to enable that and how you're going to underpin it with technology. You said something a little bit earlier, Joe, about the IT infrastructure for some of these projects. And one of the things that I say as a business guy in BP is it's never the technology. Right. So my IT counterparts love me for saying that, but I truly believe it. It's never the fault of the technology that prevents us from getting these things away. Technology has achieved unbelievable things in our lifetime. You think about some of the tech-enabled activities that go on around the world. So to be able to produce a great customer experience is not beyond any of us, and it's certainly not limited by the technology that's available to us. The way in which we're able to bring these things to life is having a really clear vision and working together in a manner that enables us to have a time to value mindset, a product focused mindset, and use the resources that we've got effectively to get stuff into customers' hands quickly. Yeah, I think this customer engagement platform really helped, but we don't use it to focus on tech. We use it to focus on how do we partner, how do we make choices, and how do we get time to value quickly.
Excellent. And so now that we've talked about the North Star, maybe now we can dive into what was that first thin slice that we attacked and how we use that as a way to create that proof point you talked about and get some value delivered quickly.
So, we knew from doing, deep research with consumers, but also quick research with consumers, we knew that price was a big factor in helping them decide where they were going to fill up. Price and location, really, were the main factors on helping them decide where to go. And so what we said is, look, actually, if you go to a fuel station within a certain radius of a BP and you found cheaper fuel, we'd match the price for you. Right. So that was the piece I referred to earlier on as being, well, that's quite out there, right? If you go to an Exxon and the price is cheaper, BP will make up the difference. Like, how on earth do you do that? So we set ourselves a lofty goal. We knew that there was a lot of value attached to it, and actually consumers responded really, really well to it. And then, as Joe was describing, we really just broke it down into thin slices. Like, how do you break this up? So can I do it for one forecourt, one service station? Forecourt's my UK word, so apologies for that, Joe.
I tease Matt for using his British terms.
So how do you do it for one store? Right? Can I do that manually? Can I just go and have an agreement with the other stores around to say we're gonna pick up your transactions and we're gonna share some of the value with our customers? And then how do you roll it out to 2 or 3 stores as you get more confident with it? How do you actually get consumers to interact, to tell us what prices they're paying and therefore what we need to pay them back? And can we actually just do a little bit of a check on that afterwards? And so this was brilliant on a number of levels. First of all, it felt impossible, but quite quickly when we really sat down and focused on it, we picked it apart and found if we break it up, we could do it. And secondly, there was nothing like this going on anywhere in the world, actually.
Well, it was unprecedented, right, Matt?
Right.
I mean, it was unprecedented. It was the first subscription program any oil and gas company had ever deployed.
That's right. That's right. And when you think about it as a price match product, i.e., I'm going to match your price for your fuel, it's difficult to think of that kind of offer on any category anywhere, actually.
Right.
Again, being lofty with the goal helped the team, I think, because everybody felt like they were really achieving something that had never been done before. And we got a lot of pride in the teams that we were working with. And that just really drove momentum in it.
Very, very cool. And so the next piece we talk about is how this combination of product thinking and platform thinking creates an environment that allows you to build on that thin slice as you move towards the bigger ecosystem of other products that can deliver incremental value for your customers. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about, because we were thoughtful on this program, right, about how, this isn't the last time BP wants to take advantage of a subscription program. This isn't the last time BP wants to have a promotions engine. And so even though those were features of the price match tool, we looked at them as, oh, these could be part of a bigger platform that fuel other things that BP does. And so you were able to take advantage of that and accelerating time to value for other initiatives down the road.
We were, Joe. Yeah, absolutely. So, by building these features, products in a modular way, we were able to extrapolate them to other markets. So we've had, numerous successes with building things once and then taking them into other places. BP is our master brand. Aral is our brand in Germany. It's a huge market-leading brand in Germany. We were able to take some of the stuff that we've done in the US or stuff that we've done in the UK and take it into Germany without too much bespoking for that particular customer base. But where we really got some success was doing it with partners. So actually, BP has a global partnership with Uber, and some of the work that we built for our own purposes, we were actually able to pop into an Uber platform and start to reach an Uber market as well. So again, I guess it's another benefit of working in this way when you feel like you can really build for one but stretch. And look, this is a good example to illustrate what I was talking about earlier. In a world where you try and lay out, I'm going to build something in the US and I'm going to take it to 6 BP markets and 3 partners and I might be finished by 2027. We didn't do that. We just had confidence in the US delivery. We built the US product with a level of reusability, and then we went to see where else we could monetize it. And actually, surprise, surprise, customers in the US had ideas and desires that the customers in Uber and the customers in Germany also felt were valuable to them. And so we were able to extend what we were building into other parts of our organization, which, again, helps acceleration and helps reduce costs.
Amazing. So as we move into a chance for folks to ask questions, I wanted to ask you, Matt, just in closing, what would, based on all the lessons you've learned through this journey, what would be some final takeaway advice you'd give folks that are trying to pursue a program of this scope for reinventing their customer experience?
I would say 2 things. One is be courageous. Right, somebody in your organization has to take the bull by the horns and take this on, and it will feel different. It certainly did in BP when we started this journey. So, you'll be the guy that people kind of look at a bit oddly because you're doing something very different, and you're challenging norms, and you're asking for small increments of money or time or people to go prove out value. That feels a bit odd, but be that person, right? It's so rewarding when it comes through for you. So that would be my first one. And my second one is just be a leader with a mindset that helps drive change. So, what Thoughtworks has said here, and what BP has experienced by partnering with Thoughtworks has enabled us to really generate some massive change in our organization. You've got a lot of like-minded people now talking the same sort of language that I've talked, and Joe will talk, and the rest of the Thoughtworkers will talk. And that really helps drive change at scale, but it feels a bit scary to begin with. So just be courageous, understand what it is you want to get after, and ask for forgiveness. Because as soon as you start to get those proof points, as soon as you start to play those vox pops back instead of coming up with a PowerPoint slide, the change is just unbelievable, and everybody wants to jump on. So yeah, that would be my my closing advice if I had any.
Thanks, Matt. So Sabrina, I guess we're ready for any questions that have come up.
Yes, before we jump into the questions, Joe and Matt, thank you so much for this really interesting talk. And the one thing that really stood out for me throughout the talk and also at the end, Matt, was the need to be courageous and brave. And I do wonder, maybe we're staying in this theme around what was actually the most challenging headwind that you faced when driving innovation at BP, and then how did you address it?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit about what I talked about in the closing, Sabrina. Honestly, I think I bought a different mindset, and actually I found that I was asking for forgiveness. So I had to work at pace, and I had to say, give me a small amount of dollars. I'm ready to go, but I will be back in 4 weeks. And that's just not sort of a mindset that BP, a lot of organizations had at the time. I mean, we're going back a few years now. But that allowed me some space to be able to go and really get focused on a problem, really get customer centric, and drive some different thinking. So, when you first turn up in a meeting, and actually you've got a prototype on your phone that you can project onto a screen and say, here's what I did. Here's what the experience looks like. Here's me talking to a consumer and the response I got. You're into a totally different conversation to the normal conversations. And if you finish that conversation with, and can I have another 30 grand to help me get through February? That's not the kind of conversation that we're used to having. But it drove change, and it created momentum, and we brought people on the journey with us. We actually created quite a lot of theatre around this as well. I mean, if you'll just indulge me for a few minutes. When we started our digital journey, I think I asked for $200,000, and we went into a small, horrible cave-like office in Soho in London. There were 5 of us, and when we first went into the office, there was nothing on the walls and no process and no nothing, but we started to build out what it is we wanted to do. And very quickly we drove momentum, right? We said, we won't try and create fancy PowerPoints for when senior leaders want to see this. We won't, create special presentations. We'll just have people come down and join in. So everybody knew we did a stand-up every morning at 9:30, and I said the best way to come and experience what we're doing is come and join the stand-up. So, there was me and my crew of 5, but, quite often during a week, we'd have 4, 5, 6 other people join us because they were really interested in some of the outputs that we were sharing across our digital channels. And then word got round, right? And then, the conversation turned from, can I have 200,000 to how do I go faster? What else do you need? Could we have more squads? Is there other markets that could get involved? And we drove change sort of from starting very small to the bottom up. So, that was good, but it did require some courage.
And that's really inspiring to hear how you took people on the journey. It's like inviting them in, making it real, and being part of that journey together.
Yeah.
I have to look at time. Joe, Matt, thank you so much for the amazing talk. There are still a few questions in the chat. So if you do have a little bit of time after this talk, it would be wonderful if you can have a look at some of those questions and share your thoughts in there. But for now, I would say thank you so much.